The other day, I had some friends from out of town that were visiting, and my best friend's wife like grabbed some cans of soda out of my garage, and she's like complaining that they're flat. I said, "Did I offer them to you?" So those are from my open houses,
Right?
and she said, "Why are you giving people at your open houses flat soda?" I said, "They're not supposed to stay long enough to grab a soda."
How have open houses been working for you lately?
Horrible.
Really?
The last 4 I've done have not had a single person come by.
Oh man.
Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. I think it's because the weather's decent outside.
Is that
They
right?
have other things to do.
I'm getting total mixed emotions from agents that I'm talking to about open houses. Some of them are swearing it's their bread and butter right now, that people are more willing to go to open houses because this, again, going back to the exclusive buyer's agreement, they don't want to they don't want to bother their agent. So they kind of want to dip their toe in the water, look at properties. They don't want to make their agent show, which...
Oh, I hate that.
Well, and I'll tell you why you hate it. You hate it because you don't have your client locked in, and you're fearful that they're going to run into another agent that they like better than you. And what I'm saying about the exclusive buyer's agreement is that at least if you make it clear that, hey, you can fire me, but they can't ghost you.
Yeah, I think the other thing I hate is that they don't value my opinion enough to include me.
In an open house?
Yeah, like if they're going to the open house, spending their time to drive all the way there, unless it's one like in their neighborhood where they just walked by, if they spent their time to drive there, they have to have some interest in it.
In
to
the
walk in the
property
door.
or... I guess,
In the
I
property.
mean, I guess that's a good point.
And like, you didn't value my opinion enough to ask me.
Is
what
it
I thought of
possible that they are just trying to...
Get a flat soda. Sorry.
Hey, don't diss my
Well, if flat
cherry Coke Zeros.
if flat sodas are going to entice buyers, Chase is going to be a millionaire because he's got a
I
whole
will.
case.
You
of
know
them.
what else will entice buyers? HEB sushi.
Wow. But yeah, I think that especially when we do business with friends, I think that a lot of times they're like, "Hey, we don't want to bother them, right? Because they know they're kind of bullshitting." And the problem with that is, though, is kind of what we just talked about. It's like you don't want them to, it's kind of like guys that are like, "I'm just gonna go to the bar and talk to women." Just because I'm chained to the porch doesn't mean I can't bark at the cars,
You
right?
just got to keep that skill going.
But a woman's biggest fear is like when you're barking at the cars, like what happens when you find one that you're like, oh man, right? And I think that the fear is for agents is like, well, what if they find another agent that they like better? Or what if, somebody just really tells them something that they love and, you might not even get the opportunity because next thing you know, they're like, fuck it, we're just going to write on this house. It just happened. And we're going to use the agent that was at the property. And you're like, that can't happen. That right there is why you need your exclusive buyer's agreement, because that is basically like being married when you're like, shit, as a married individual, thank God, because I've been divorced. That's a legal thing, right?
Mm-hmm. They're expensive, aren't they?
They are, man. But you know what? Worth every penny. And but the moral of the story is that like I had to tell my spouse, listen, I wasn't able to just go buy another house, figuratively go buy another house and not tell her, right? Like she had to find out. And that is exactly what the exclusive buyer's agreement will do. And, you can't hold a buyer hostage. You can't be like, hey, well, you got this exclusive buyer's agreement. So if you like that agent better, like, fuck you, you're stuck with me, because that's not really how it works. There is ways out of it, but they have to tell you. You have to at least say, look, found someone I like better. It's not me, it's you.
Yeah, in the heat of the market, there were those buyers that were like, oh, I went straight to the builder's rep because they were able to give me a discount. So I didn't have a real.
How do I mix one of these up?
Oh. I think I should actually hold myself back from I think I've had enough to where
and it
I'm
works
free thinking.
And it
right
works
now.
with builders too. I mean, anybody who goes in with an exclusive buyer's agreement to the builder and signs a contract, I mean, that builder is now under procuring clause. If that agent at the spec home says, hey, you don't need to use an agent, if you've done your job, your buyer is going to say, we signed a contract with our buyer's agent. And that builder rep is immediately going to go, okay, well, then you need to contact them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think we all can tell horror stories of buyers that thought that was the best route to go. And you as an attorney can appreciate this. Like, how many people want to act as their own attorney?
Oh, many.
And how does
Everyone.
that play out?
Not usually very well.
I love Rocket Lawyer.
Right. Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, it's like, you know, free.
Legal Zoom?
Yeah, and that's how I made all my LLCs. Yeah.
Well, and I'd love your opinion on this.
Go.
Because I've used this analogy before, maybe a little more willy-nilly than I probably should have. But like real estate, you guys have the bar,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kind of like NAR, but the bar.
Yeah.
In real
Funny
estate,
how-
we have a different bar.
Funny how that's a funny thing to say. So you have the bar, and I would think that individuals that come into a courtroom with the intention of representing themselves without a law degree is offensive.
Whenever it happens to me, I get really excited. Whenever I get so excited. Whenever someone I'm
to
going up
Beat
against,
up on some noobs.
Yeah, like most courts will not accept electronic evidence. So I have people come into court sometimes with an iPad, a document on an iPad saying, "Look at this thing," and then the judge will just scream at them, "Inadmissible. You didn't print the document off and bring me a hard copy. You're just showing me a picture of a screen. Anything you show me is worthless." So I'm sitting there going,
But to be a
Sweet.
judge, don't you have to be an attorney?
to be a judge, I'm almost positive you have to have a bar license to be a judge.
Okay. So you ultimately, okay, we'll call it that way. You have to have a bar license to be an attorney. So you have gone to college, and then you went to law school, and then you worked your way up and you became an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, in any legal case, you're trying to convince a judge of your case,
Yeah.
right? So if
Or
you're
jury, but yeah.
or a jury, and the judge is going to rule, right? So if you're coming in unrepresented, you on the other side of things, you're laughing, right? But as a judge, I would think I'm a little irritated right off the bat that there's somebody that believes that without 4 years of schooling and a law degree is going to come into my courtroom and is going to represent themselves, unless they're just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know justice is blind, and therefore if you really are completely in the right, but most of the times if you're completely in the right, it doesn't go to court. It settles itself outside of court. I'm a little annoyed as a judge. I'm a little annoyed that you have the arrogance to think that you're going to come in here and you're going to try to convince me with other attorneys who have put in the time and done the work. It's just not a good look, right?
No.
And to the analogy of the builder, here you are as an unrepresented buyer going in and saying, like, here's what we're going to do. Like, I think the builder is kind of what you're saying. He's laughing. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy doesn't even know half of the things that he needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everybody's looking at you like, what are you doing, man? Like, if you were able to represent yourself, like, why are you not licensed? Like, how did you obtain the knowledge and information and experience that you need to represent yourself?
Look, hold on. I mean, we both know that to get a real estate license, they give those things out to pretty much any swinging dick. You really don't have to know how to do the job to get a real estate license. You have to know how to study for the exam, pass the exam.
And all the exam teaches you is how to stay out of jail.
Exactly. It doesn't teach you how to actually do the job. It doesn't teach you what you need to tell your client to do or not to do and the questions that they need to ask.
For sure.
Just lead paint addendums and seller's disclosure.
How many
notice.
square feet in an acre?
But isn't it debatable that any amount of education is better than none?
No, I
Okay.
disagree. I mean, you could come to me for legal advice and I could tell you I have a physics degree and you're going to go, sweet, that is worthless.
Sure. Okay.
I mean,
So I guess, again, going into negotiating, to the analogy that I utilized as a judge or anything along those lines. So where does the experience, as far as a real estate agent, it's in the experience? Would you agree with that?
it's probably in the experience. Yeah.
Okay. And so how many transactions do you think a non-licensed individual will engage in, even if he went unrepresented in every single transaction that he does?
What was the question?
How many transactions do
Yeah.
you think that an average individual
Mm-hmm.
will engage in, real estate related, on their own accord?
Not very many.
Maybe
Two,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
How many
So if
homes
it's-
do you buy
if-
in your life?
Right. And so if it's based on an experience level, forget the license. We'll throw that out the window in this debate. Is it safe to say that somebody who is representing you and is like, hey, here's who I am, here's who I work for, here's my brokerage, I am licensed for the record, and I've done multiple transactions, that's going to hold a little more respect and weight than someone who's like, I've bought 2 homes in my life, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Although, to play the other side of this,
Please do. I love these conversations.
I love a devil's
how many realtors have never bought a house?
Ooh, I
And
love this
I'll be
conversation.
honest. I think I'm just gonna like use her as an example because she loves to talk. I think my mom, who is she is not a realtor. She is bought I don't know 6 or 7 houses in her life. She likes to move often. I think she knows more about real estate than a brand new licensed agent who's trying
Agreed.
to do their
So.
first deal.
I've had agents that
Because
have
I learned a lot more in my own transactions than I did from my clients' transactions.
I've had agents that have flat out said that there should be some level of certification that is required in terms of like you get a regular license because you passed the test, but if you've never bought and sold a home, like you get like a green belt versus like a brown belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there should be like tiers of agents, and you can choose to work with whatever tier you want.
So how do we do this business? Do we set up a licensing scheme?
We're
wanna-
gonna form a club. It's gonna cost you $2,000
Right, yeah,
a
we-
year. It's
we
gonna
sell
be
a
called
course.
Here we
the
go.
National Association of Realtors.
Well, because here's something that I will say that, and here's me, for lack of a better term, like humbling myself in terms of knowledge, right? Like I bought my first house when I was 25, and I'm not saying that as like a brag or anything like that.
Me too.
And I bought, so I bought my first house when I was 25 and bought a couple other homes, but I hadn't sold a home until I was 31.
Mm-hmm.
So for 6 years, I had never been on the selling side of a transaction. And I had assisted people in the seller side. I'd been a part of it all the way down to the finances, to the contracts, to the negotiations, to everything. So, in comparison to someone who's never sold a home, I was obviously much more versed. But when I sold my first home, it was very eye-opening to me in regards to just for lack of a better term, the emotion that's associated with it,
Oh, yeah.
the frustration that's associated with it, and being on that side. And I learned a lot and was able to empathize more with sellers after I sold a home. And at that point in my career, I had already been 10 years in this business and had never sold a home.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed me. And so going back to like, I've had real estate agents that are like, I think it should be a certification as to, something you should be able to like the multi-million-dollar producer, you should be able to say, hey, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I have bought homes on my own. I have sold homes on my own.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go to a dentist with bad teeth. I see a lot of
Right.
real estate agents that have never owned real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the dentist doesn't do their own teeth.
All right, that's okay.
But they
very
still
good
need
point,
to
very
go
good
to
point,
the
good point, good
dentist,
point.
so they
Yeah.
don't see value in doing and they don't keep up on their. I like that analogy because basically what it proves is that
Don't
you're
be a
not
barber.
you're
Or
not
if your financial planner is broke. yeah.
right. You're not practicing what you're preaching, right? Like there is actually in our business, in my business on the lending side, you can actually lose your license, I believe, and I shouldn't say that because I don't know this for sure, but what I do know for sure is when you apply for your license, there are credit score requirements, and they will potentially not issue you a license if your credit is bad, if you've had foreclosures, if you've, not made due on like business loans and stuff like that, because in my licenses line of work, they feel like how are you going to advise people financially when your finances are a shit show?
Yeah, they do that with the bar license as well.
Well, that's kind of insane. Like, I mean, any drug dealer can become a realtor tomorrow as long as you can pass the background check.
Because you're not dealing in finances, though. There's a difference. So that's why I think that it should be a little more relaxed for real estate, because you guys technically aren't dealing with, advising people. You shouldn't be advising people on anything financially. I know a lot of you do. You shouldn't be, because you're not licensed to do it. I'm not licensed to give legal advice.
Nope.
Yeah. For some reason,
Don't take legal advice from me.
Nope.
Don't take tax advice. That's one of the things. I have CPAs on here. We talk a lot about 1031 exchanges. We talk a lot about
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, you deal with a lot of that.
I do. I do some 1031 exchanges. They're very interesting. I think that's a fantastic process.
Right, a way to defer taxes, not to avoid. And, so like we do a lot of conversations about 1031 exchanges. We do a lot of conversations about ways to, I can't say avoid. I've learned this not the hard way, but I've learned from CPAs how to defer taxes through capital gains and things of that nature. But every time I make comments like that, I look to the camera and I say, I am not legally allowed to give any sort of tax advice. If you want to seek true tax advice, you need to contact a licensed, certified public accountant. So, yeah, going back to the license, though, I mean, going to unrepresented in the seller side of things, or excuse me, the building side of things, I mean, I'm harping on these buyer's representation agreements. I always have, but now I really got something to hang my hat on.
Well, I think that might all of a sudden be part of my listing and buyer's consultation is, yes, I've been through both these processes myself. Because right now I'm really empathizing with my sellers who have had their house on the market for a while, because my flip house has been on the market for a while.
Right, which is
longer
big of you
than
to
any of my
admit.
sellers. 148 days right now.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
Oof.
But now I can
tenants
tell
in
my
it?
sellers, no. Now I can tell my sellers, look, I'm right here with you. Like, the market is crap. Yeah. Like, I keep lowering the price of my own property. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. But now I can really empathize with them because mine is more than just a check to me. I mean, my sellers are more than just a check, if you're listening to this. But, I mean, I'm not financially invested in them. Whereas with my own property, I am financially invested in it. I lose $4,000 a month for every month it remains on the market.
Gross.
So, yeah, I mean, with that one, I can really empathize with my sellers who are selling their investment properties that are currently sitting vacant. But I couldn't before.
Well, and to your point, I'm here's something I haven't talked about on the podcast about my life. I'm currently under contract on a property right now.
Who is your realtor?
And
Was it Nina?
of course, we together are. She's not only my real estate agent, she's my business partner on this one. And
Are y'all married?
we are legally married, as legal as it gets. But the only people who are involved is Jesus and the state. We have sat down with attorneys and paid lots of money to put together a lot of contracts on all the properties that we have, and we have a will. We have all of the things. There is nothing that marriage could do for us other than make us whole in the eyes of God, and allow us to get a bigger tax break potentially on our federal tax return.
Okay.
So we're as married as they get.
Keep living in sin then.
Yeah, correct. Jesus, I'm sorry.
Wait, but y'all haven't had like a party for this?
No, I mean, no. But the point I'm trying to make is,
We should marry y'all on this podcast.
I mean, we could have some sort of ceremony. We did it in front of attorney and then had it notarized. But
That'd be badass.
have you ever done anything like that? Well, you deal with real estate law. It's different, I'm sure. But
I've never done a marriage.
right.
I've never done that one.
You can't officiate a wedding
Well,
yet?
it's technically not a marriage, right? I mean, like
Whatever
I said,
this is, then,
right?
yeah.
Well, it's something I'm seeing a lot more people doing. It's ultimately a prenup at the end of the day. So we have a prenup without going through the actual nuptials.
Yeah. I don't quite I kind of like the idea of marriage, but I don't quite understand the idea that now we're doing a threesome with Uncle Sam. I never quite understood that. So
I agree. That's why I haven't done it.
I guess I understand your method
Right.
more than the traditional one.
I mean, yeah, in traditional, the only things that we aren't appeasing is the government and Jesus. And both of those make me a little skeptical. And that's for another podcast. But
I thought you were single until our friend Jake mentioned that you were married.
oh yeah, so but
He's married to you. I was like, oh, I thought it was like a secret fling thing.
no. We've been together for we've been together for 5 years.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought it was an
she's
under the table
fantastic.
thing. Yeah.
No. It's definitely not under the table. Trust me. If we decided that we were going to go our separate ways, well, actually, it's all written. So we could leave each other today and there would be no confusion. Everything we have drafted, all we would have to do is call our attorney that drafted everything. I mean, if any of us had any kind of argument on, well, I thought this or I thought that, there is no confusion. It is with my attorney's office. It is also printed and locked up in a fireproof safe, and there's no confusion on who gets what and what goes where. But we are in the process. We are under contract. That does not mean we are closed. There are still things that can happen. But the point I'm trying to make is it helps me, like we talked about, buying, selling. It helps me empathize with buyers because unbeknownst to the public, even as a lender, I'm going to take a rate in the 7-8% range. And, you know, when people are purchasing properties and they're like, the rates are high, the fees are high, it's been very disarming lately. It is a new take that I've taken in my sales tactics where every single loan estimate that I've sent over, I get a phone call and basically it goes, Matt, I'm looking at everything that you've put together. These rates seem high and these fees seem expensive. And normally I would say, well, and I would give explanation. And my initial reaction that has been very disarming is I say, they are. Rates are high. Fees are high.
Yeah.
For you, for me, for everybody. It sucks. But hey, I'm getting a great deal on this property if it goes through.
How many
And-
times have y'all said the phrase, marry the home, date the rate?
Oh,
God,
I'm
I fucking
so
hate
over
that.
It just made me want to smash this
I'll look
glass
in the
into my
camera and
face.
say I fucking hate that.
Well, the new one, here's the new one that's out that I've been saying a lot because everyone else is saying it is once the deal closes, you cannot renegotiate the price of the property, but you can renegotiate your interest rate in the future,
One day.
Okay.
right? So if you
It's
are
technically true.
Yeah, is your
completely
agent
true.
going to
That's-
co-sign that loan with you?
It's completely true. And so the point is that one of the things that another agent said to me that I've been using on this podcast a lot that I really like is this is not the right way to go about things, buyers, but the two things that buyers seem to be most concerned about is price and pictures,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're looking for a home, you're focused on price and pictures. That's all you care about. No one's looking at the description. No one's thinking about their payment. And that's the third P. It really shouldn't be price and pictures. It should be payment, right? You should be focused on the payment and you should be focused on potential wealth, equity, and all of those things. Because again, like your payment, it can change. You can contest your taxes. You can reduce your interest rate. You can do all of those things, but you can never change the price that you purchase a property for when that deal closes. Yes, you can negotiate it up front, but when that deal's done, whatever you paid for that house, that's it. You can't go back in a few years and say, you know what, I overpaid for this property, I deserve a discount. That doesn't happen. But you can renegotiate rates, and you can renegotiate terms on your loan, and you can renegotiate taxes. And what do all of those things affect? Your payment.
There you go.
Your payment.
I had a couple previous buyers, now owners, who came back to me like maybe 6 months after they bought at the height of the market. And they said, why is my property worth less? And I said, yeah, but you also bought at a 3% interest rate. Now people are buying at a 6% interest rate. I was like, look, you didn't buy the property to sell it this year. Like, sorry, you're seeing your, Zillow's estimate go down, but we're in this for the long run. When I had my first conversation with you, I said, how long are you staying in Austin? If they don't say 3 years, then I'm suggesting they probably shouldn't buy.
Agreed.
And most of the time, they're going to say 3, 5, 10 years, my whole life. And then in that case, fine, let's buy.
I think that would resonate with any financial advisor that's doing, stocks and things like that. If you, especially when we're talking about, long-term investments where you're buying things with the intention of not even touching them until retirement. I mean, if I watched my 401k every single day, it would give me a fucking heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter what my 401k is worth because at the end of the day, it really matters what it's worth when I'm ready to retire.
That's what matters.
And it's the same thing with a home. To your point, I was in the business pre-08, and I remember talking to clients that bought maybe in like 06 and 07. In fact, I told this story about 2 weeks ago. I had a gentleman who called me up and said, I want to purchase a new property, and the problem that I'm having right now is rates are just so high, and I don't know if it's something I want to do. And in the same breath, he was like, I bought my home in the height of the market in 2007, And, you know, we bought in the height of the market. And I said, well, how much equity do you have in it? And he goes, and this is in Ohio, by the way, so just take this into consideration in terms of numbers. He's like, I've owned the home now for, you know, what is it, 17, 18. I've owned the home for 13 years, and I've made $150,000 on it.
So here, that's like 300.
Sure. But in his mind, he bought in the height of the market, right? And he got a good rate. And now he's hung up on the fact that he is buying when prices are low, but he doesn't want to take on a high rate. And here this dude has lived in this house for over 10 years, and he's accumulated $130,000 of equity on top of what he's paid into it, right? Because he's also, you know, brought down the principal of his loan. And I get it. We all want everything. You know, we want, I'll give you another quick story. This is a real estate agent that told me this, and this was mind-blowing to me that a real estate agent said this. He was like, it really pisses me off how on my rental properties, the county's coming in and increasing all of my taxes. And because of the increase in all of my taxes, I'm unable to make like mailbox money, right? The amount of money I'm collecting on rent is barely covering the amount of money that I have to pay on my mortgage. And I'm like, how long have you owned these properties? And he's like, oh, like 8 years.
Yeah, boohoo.
And I'm like, so you've got, you know, he's like 3 of them too. He's like, I've got like $1 million worth of equity, and I'm pissed off about. I'm like, well, you can't have it both ways, because hypothetically, if your equity wouldn't have accumulated the way that it did, sure, then your taxes would be low, and you'd be making what, $500 on each one. So would you rather have $1,500 a month today, or $1 million worth of equity in the properties that you've accumulated right now? And even if I take $1,500 a month and multiply it by 8 years, it's not $1 million. I mean, I'm not super quick at math. I just use calculators, but
Sure.
you know, and so everybody just wants, you know, the line I always say in real estate, and it's not just real estate, it's life. Everybody wants a guarantee on everything, and in real estate, that is one thing that just doesn't exist. There are no guarantees.
Yeah, I mean, I have this conversation with, you know, we talked about the people who claim to be investors who are not investors. They're just the broad strokers. You know, I have this conversation
I'm sure Travis encounters a lot of those.
Oh, yeah. I had a guy that wanted to go in on a foreclosure property with me the other day.
with you.
Yeah.
I'd go in on anything with you, just letting you know.
All right. We can do a foreclosure property. A good fix.
I trust you. Yeah.
You ought to. But, yeah, I was trying to. I said, okay, so we're going to go in on this property together. And what are we going to do? I said, okay, I'm going to find the property, find the money for the property, evict the tenant, etc. Fix the property. What is it that you're going to do? Oh, well, I'm gonna help. So what do you mean you're gonna help? What are you gonna do? All of the work that needs to be done. What specifically are you going to do? Why are you in on this deal? What value do you bring? Yeah, but I'm gonna help. Like I'll call the contractor for you. Yeah. No, you're not.
Right.
This is worthless. You're wasting our time.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about these investors.
Yeah, so these investors,
Yeah.
I mean, I was having this conversation last night. I was at this young professionals networking event. I was having this conversation with two 18-year-olds who just dropped out of high school to become real estate wholesalers. Anyway, they're looking for properties in Austin that cash flow each month.
Good luck.
And I was like, look, we're in a wonderful market where properties are appreciating like it's nobody's business, even in this bad year. You know, we have the highest rates we've had since, 2008? And
no, worse. We've
worse
had the highest rates that we've had since the late 80s.
And
it's been about 25
our
years.
properties have only
30
lost, 4% in value in a year? It's a great market to be in. I said, but the thing is, if you're purchasing a house, you're lucky to break even if you're, renting
on the
out.
monthly.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, you got to take the appreciation into account. I used to have 2 condos in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. One of them, when I sold it, was worth $66,000. One of them was worth $77,000. Both were 2 bedrooms in a luxury high-rise. Both of them rented for $900 and basically $1,000. That cash flow is incredible. The difference in 10 years because I inherited them from my dad. The difference in 10 years, the properties only lost value. The cash flow went up. I mean, they were paid off when I got them. And so even if someone were to purchase that at 66,000, that's $1,000 a month. That's still cash flowing. But in that whole zip code, everything's lost value.
Right.
Whereas I would rather be in Austin, where if my rental property's breaking even, I'm doing pretty good. Even if I lose a couple hundred here and there to fix things, at least I'm appreciating an average rate of what in the last 20 years, 13% a year.
So the moral of the story is you would prefer, and I think the answer is long-term gains versus short-term rewards, maybe is what we call it.
For sure. So if someone's trying to invest in Austin, if you're in it for the short term, go invest in another.
Right.
At least another city. Maybe in San Antonio you can cash flow. I don't know what their real estate looks like.
But even with cash
yeah,
flow,
go to
like
Kentucky
I
or
understand
Ohio.
money now. You know, what is it? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Yep.
Right? Like, yeah, I get it. If you need money now, cash flow, like I get it. But at the end of the day, like if you're doing any sort of investing, the real money is in the long game. I mean, it's in the long game of all of our businesses. New attorneys don't make a lot of money. New real estate agents don't make a lot of money. Lenders that enter this business don't make a lot of money. Like, you've got to pay your dues. You've got to get your experience. You've got to put in the time. You got to work your contacts, so on and so forth. And real estate's the same way. Like, buying a property and making, what do they call it? It's like a pet peeve of mine. What's the fucking line? Is it residual income that they call
Passive
it?
income?
Passive
Yeah,
income.
yeah.
That's the term I was
There's
looking
nothing
for.
passive in this
Passive income. I want to make passive income. Like,
People
yeah,
don't even
well,
realize
so do
this.
I.
Even if you have a house that you own, the amount, and you've already paid for it, the amount of work that it takes to, like my house, the amount of pain in the ass that I have to go through to getting my roof replaced.
Right.
Oh my God, it's a second job. And then fixing the property as it needs work. Even if you do none of the work and just pay to have it done, coordinating with the yard guy, coordinating with the roof guy, coordinating with the utilities, it is work.
Well,
There's-
time is money.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of said that when we talked about going after procuring clause. You're like, what kind of time is that going to take? Like, and how valuable is your time? And I agree with you.
Yeah, I've had people suggest, hey, I want to go into investing in real estate for passive income. I'm like, look, even if you have a property manager, it's not passive income. You want to go in real estate for passive income, go on Robinhood and invest in, Simon Properties or, whatever REIT, you can get a 5% return from.
But I think it's debatable that even if we're talking about stocks or investments, like the true money is made in investing in the long term. I mean, you can make short-term money and profit is profit, but like, again, I would rather, what's the term? Like, would you rather make $1 a day for, in compound interest over 30 years, or would you rather make $1,000 a month for, they do all these, analogies and whatnot. And it's all about the long term. It really is. And so to your point about purchasing a property, like, especially if you're not planning on selling it, like, why are you wrapped up in what your property is worth when you have zero intention of cashing out? Who cares? Literally, who cares? Because, again, going back to my '08 analogy, I had so many sob stories of individuals that were trying to refinance, and they're like, Matt, I'm underwater. What am I going to do? And they're making their payments. They're affordable. Like, they're like, yeah, I can make the payment, but I'm so disappointed that, my house is worth less than what I thought it was worth. Well, guess what? Flash forward to the guy who bought in 2007. I just told the story. I talked to him. He had no intention of selling. He was just boo-hooing to have something to be pissed about. And now he's beating his chest in the same breath about how he's got $150,000 worth of equity over 10 years in, I can't say the city, but in a very small town outside of Cleveland, Ohio.
One of my favorite fun facts, and this used to come up all the time when the market was at its peak at 20 and 21, people were saying, how could real estate prices ever go higher than this?
Sure.
And I would always revert back to, people said the same thing in 2008. They said, how could real estate prices ever go higher? I wish I bought 100 houses in 2008 instead of being in the 7th grade. But because the average house in Austin was, what, $239,000?
What, when you were in 7th grade?
Yeah.
I bet it was less than that.
I think I looked at
See, this is why I wanted to plug in the HDMI cord and have right now we could have just been like,
it was in the lower 200,000s, and now
Okay.
it's, what, 500,000?
Yeah. Well, and again, I just, I don't know. It's one of those things where we can tell these stories, and I feel like people watch us and like, oh, these guys know everything. But it's like, look, man, like these are things that I've seen. You know, I've probably been a part of well over 1,000 transactions, and you know, again, just holding on to the property. I mean, just through this is what I was thinking is just through inflation alone. I mean, right now inflation is a buzzword, right? We're experiencing high inflation. The Fed is doing everything they can to curb it. They want to get it down to 2%. And currently inflation is at, I think, year over year. I mean, about a year ago it was at 7%. I think they've got it down to like 4.5%. Well, guess what? Inflation's bad. But if inflation continues at that point, and even if they get it curbed to 2%, your house will appreciate by 2% just due to inflation alone. Like that's just math. That's just math.
I had a great conversation with my financial planner, and I don't say this to like, you know, I don't know, swing my massive hog or anything.
How massive? Go on.
Um,
Okay. The
but-
$22 bottle
so-
of whipped cream.
Yeah, that's about what I have in my account right now. Anyway, so my
Not in your pants.
my
though.
financial planner, she said when I retire at like 60 years old, she has me on a plan where I can withdraw like $170,000 a year, like as income.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not 60, maybe it's 80 years. I don't care. She said
A lot older than
by
you are
that
now.
time. So basically, we're projecting into like 2060-ish.
Okay.
She said by that time, $170,000 a year is the equivalent to $75,000
I agree.
right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's insane. So my $500,000 house is going to be worth $1.5 million, but I'm not even going to look at it that like it's crazy.
No, and as a young buck, I remember when I got into this industry, you know, I know, Travis, you don't know this, but I got into this industry as a telemarketer at the age of 15 as an after-school job.
There you go.
I've never done anything really outside of what I do right now. Now, granted, I wasn't a loan officer, but I can say, and it's true, I have been in this business in some capacity since I was 15, so it's like 26 years. I remember when I finally got licensed and I was doing all of the actual stuff that I do right now, and I remember thinking, if I can make $100,000, I am going to be balling out of control. And I was dreaming big, right? Like this wasn't like, oh, if I make $100,000, it was like $100,000. This would have been in like 2003. If you were making $100,000 a year, that was, you were like a top 5%er.
Yeah, you were a badass.
Right? You were, and now here's a crazy statistic. If you want to purchase in Austin right now, you have to have an annual income with no debt.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's household, doesn't matter if it's individual, you can have a wife, whatever. You have to have zero debt, and you have to have an annual income gross of $110,000 to purchase a property in Austin proper right now.
That's insane.
Yeah. So you could do it with two people making 60 and no debt, but 110K. So flash back to 2003 where I'm thinking like, I'm going to make $100,000 and I'm going to just basically be the guy that's like, throw it in the bag, whatever I want, I can get it. And now you can't even buy a house in Austin for $100,000 if you don't have that in your household income with no debt.
Wow.
So you said something to me, and this is when I want to get Travis back into this because you kind of hit a nerve, and I'm glad my brain is still on after all of these very, very sugary drinks. You
They,
mentioned
like throw up.
you mentioned off-market properties,
Mm,
and
did I?
I have questions for you. And if you don't have the answer, just say you don't.
Okay.
But I get a lot of questions about people, and there is a gentleman who's on YouTube, and I'm just going to call him out, that's doing this sub 2. It's at
Pace Morby.
Pace Morby. I want to talk about this
I like him.
because I don't dislike him. He's here. He's fairly local, and a lot of what he's doing, I get it. But a lot of what I'm hearing and my experience in the industry, it's a little sus.
What is
Is-
sub 2?
It's the
Ooh.
name of the company. So let
Oh,
me
okay.
well,
Excellent.
and Chase, if you want to run with this, if you
All
know what I'm
right.
talking about, go
So-
for it.
In sub 2, let's say you're purchasing someone's property. Instead of you getting your own loan or you assuming their loan, you basically start paying their loan,
So a wrap.
but not a wrap
Okay.
because it's still under that person's name. You start paying the bank. The bank is allowed to call a due on sale clause because you purchased their home by paying for the arrears that they owe in the property. So this is people who are behind on their mortgages.
Not
or
necessarily. Not necessarily, but go on.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the people you're going to be discussing with,
The
if
smart
you're-
ones.
if you were to purchase their home sub to, are people who are behind on their loans. They don't want to get foreclosed on, so you scare them into thinking they're going to get foreclosed on.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially get the deed to their house in exchange for paying off what they have delinquent with their mortgage company.
Not only do you get the deed, but they sign off on title.
Yeah, so then you start paying their loan each month. Let's say you stop paying, they're the ones who get foreclosed on, not you. So you don't have it on your record that you have this debt, but you still own this asset.
So,
So
let's
how do you
hang on. Let me unpack
Go
this
ahead.
for
Yeah.
you, so you
Do you
can, because you didn't do it. You didn't.
I needed it for the Opus clip.
Yeah, you. No, I mean, truthfully, the way you described it isn't wrong, but I'm gonna chop it into bite sizes. I like analogies. So you own a home,
Mm-hmm.
and let's just say right now you want to sell said home, and we're gonna say that your home is worth $500,000.
Okay.
You currently owe $490,000 on your home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's $10,000 worth of equity in the property.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to contact Chase right now and said, Chase, I want to get out of this property. I need to move. My wife just had a baby, whatever your reason is. And we want to go ahead and we want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Chase is going to come in and ultimately say, well, the commission in this current state of affairs, because this is interesting because of the NAR analogy, I'm going to need to charge you a 6% commission because, we're going to need to offer a commission to the buy side, and I'm going to obviously not work for free. So if we were to list your house at market value at $500,000, there's going to be $30,000 on the table in regards to commissions.
Mm-hmm.
So by simple math, when it's all said and done, you're only going to walk away with $470,000 for the sale of your property.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to write a check for 20.
You will write a check for 20.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So what people are doing in these situations is that they are coming in and saying, here's what we'll do for you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy your house for said $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask that, you not only I'm going to give you an extra 10 grand because you only owe 490, right? You're going to pay off your bank and you're going to walk away with $10,000. What I need you to do is we are going to go to a title company and we're going to sign this purchase contract, and you are going to sign off on title, eliminate ownership that you have of this property,
Mm-hmm.
and the mortgage that you are currently responsible for, I'm just going to pay for it on what basically is a handshake agreement. And you're going, and so my intentions, Travis, are that I'm going to invest $100,000 into your property to go ahead and rehab it, and I'm going to end up selling it for $600,000,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to pay off your mortgage in 6 months to a year, so you've got nothing to worry about. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to invest $100. I've got $500 into it. I'm going to sell it for $650. I'm going to make $50,000. You don't want to deal with it, so you don't want to put up $100,000, but I do. I see value in your property. I'm going to get you out from underneath it. But in that 12-month timeline, I'm paying your mortgage to your mortgage company.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the hook for the liability in regards to if I pay, and you have zero ownership left over because you're going to sign off on all rights on that. What are your thoughts about that in regards to a legality as an attorney? How would you instruct a seller in that situation?
Don't do it.
Why is that?
Because you're taking a ton of risk for not a lot of gain. It just seems like a very, very bad deal to potentially still be on the hook for 490 in this situation. Yeah.
I relate it to being a good gun owner.
Mm.
You guys have guns?
Oh yeah,
Yeah? You guys are good gun owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean I haven't turned it on myself yet.
Give me a call.
Even then, that doesn't make you a bad gun owner. What makes you a bad gun owner is when someone else gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
And so in these situations, to the point of the gentleman that I've talked about, when everything goes good, everybody's good,
Yeah.
right? Just like being a good gun owner. But what happens when you're accidentally a bad gun owner?
Things are very bad. So
Very
yeah,
bad.
Your situation works very well whenever properties are increasing in value.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, but I'm good for it, and I'm going to pay for it. So Here's another thing that I loved because I went down the rabbit hole on this on Monday because I had a real estate agent that was sending all of this stuff to me from this guy.
I've seen a lot of his content.
Oh man, I watched more of it than I would honestly like to admit. And so one of the other things they talked about is due on sale clause. You brought it up already. So a bank, and I know this because of, being in lending, is that if the bank finds out about this, what they have the legal right to do is that as a lender, anyone who is on a loan is required to be on title. Now, we can't legally keep you on title, but if you pull yourself off on title and put somebody else on and you're no longer owner of the property, that loan that we have as a lien on your property is now able
Due.
to be due in full.
Called. Yeah.